What is happening, guys? I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. This video topics are going to be about the CGC Pikachu Illustrator card that Radar got back, the CGC reslabbing kind of scandal, I guess, that's going on, even though it just seems like another hurdle for the grading companies, and PSA numbers going up. So let's go ahead and get straight into this. So you guys may hear barking in the background. You may hear my daughter screaming "Daddy" over and over again, as well as banging on the door. This does happen a lot on the channel. A lot of you that are in my same age group, a lot of you do have kids. A lot of you can relate, can understand. This is kind of life. So anyways, I appreciate you guys for supporting the channel, and let's get into it. So Radar, Radar, a kind of, they're calling him an influencer. I just see him as a really good Pokemon podcast channel, on YouTube. He seems like a really cool guy. He seems like a really nice guy. I feel like judging from his character. I feel like watching his content. He's a very genuine guy. I really, really like him. I've never met him in person. I've never met him at Collecticon. And I honestly didn't start watching that channel till recently. I don't watch a lot of channels. I really don't watch a lot of content in general. I am busy enough with my own life, and I make my own content, right? But this one was kind of hard to avoid. Several channels were covering this topic, and I thought, oh wow, I really like that channel. So let's take a look at what's going on here. So it looks like Radar. And correct me if I'm right here, because I skimmed over this. I just thought it was very interesting where the discussion was going. It seems that Radar had a CGC 7 or a raw card, but in some thumbnail I saw CGC 7. Either way, raw, CGC 7, regardless. Pikachu Illustrator. Let's give you a breakdown on this. If you're new to the hobby, what are they talking about? What is Pikachu Illustrator? The Pikachu Illustrator card is probably one of the most valuable cards in the hobby right now. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily the rarest card in the hobby, but I would say it's definitely hands down one of the most valuable cards in the hobby. People have referenced Logan Paul for a lot of different purchases. When he swapped over his Charizard to get a Beckett label, a Beckett label Charizard to get a PSA 10 Charizard to get a Beckett label Charizard. I can't even remember. But regardless, we reference Logan Paul a lot. He apparently bought a Pikachu Illustrator. We don't know if this is a legit purchase. We don't even know if all of it was paid up front. This is absolutely wrapping my head around how much money he spent on the original, Pikachu Illustrator card that fetched the most money ever. I think it was $5 million, supposedly. I thought it was $2 million, but I guess it became $5 million. Anyways, regardless, he spent a ton of money on this card. I would say a lot of people hate Logan Paul for getting into this hobby, kind of blowing up the hobby and making it somewhat unsustainable. We don't know if this would have happened with him or without him, but regardless, I think there's some credit due to making the hobby popular again. Anyways, all that being said, people tend to not like Logan Paul. He's done some shady things, I suppose. I'm not going to get into that. But he spent a lot of money on this card in particular. Anyways, so this card now, with his influence and others' influence and, very well-known collectors in the hobby that own this card, the Pikachu Illustrator card, which was handed out as an illustration contest. There's only so many of them out in the world, 10, 15 out in the world total, maybe 20, maybe there are 100 given out, but over the years, only, a dozen of them have survived or are graded. You don't see this card a lot. You might see it in lower grades, but you certainly don't see it in a high grade a lot. All this to say that Radar got this card back from CGC and it received a CGC 10. A lot of people are upset about this. A lot of people are saying that he's an influencer and he was treated differently on this. I don't think that was the case. I don't think it has anything to do with his, influence in the hobby. I really don't think it has anything to do with that. I think that, I do believe that CGC had a motive to bump up this grade and say, hey, CGC just graded one of the most sought after cards in Pokemon and it's a very, very minty card. I think that there was definitely some motivation and ulterior motive there, but I don't necessarily think that Radar, his influence in the hobby, I tend to not believe that anybody's influence in the hobby has anything to do with grading. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe there are some ties to the grading companies, to the CEOs, to the people that work down below. Who knows? I think it's really hard for anybody to claim they know the real story on this or the reasons why things happened. All the content creators, we're all speculating, right? But in my opinion, in my speculation, I believe that CGC, has a motive to make this card a higher grade and to say that, hey, we are freshly in the card grading world. CGC, if you don't know this, CGC has been grading comic books for a long time. When I was starting to collect cards, CGC was not grading cards. They were grading comic books. They gradually got into the card game and have really tried pumping up their numbers, keeping prices low. I guess in a lot of times regrading vintage cards and maybe giving higher grades. They're trying to pump up their numbers, in my opinion. That's what this is about more than anything, is that CGC is seeing that they are getting left in the dust. Same with Beckett, same with SGC. PSA seems to be just leaving everybody behind. And it's a scary indicator for the hobby when all these companies are kind of struggling, but PSA is showing us that things are still going well. Do I want PSA to always be top dog? Not really. I would like there to be an underdog. I think everybody likes there to be an underdog story, and I think a lot of us believed in CGC, that CGC was going to be that underdog because they were so gung-ho about marketing, about keeping prices down, getting cards in, having a quick turnaround. Beckett really had a shot, but Beckett's prices and their turnaround just can't compare with CGC. And I think if Beckett could change that, I would like to see Beckett step it up a notch and become the number 2 in the hobby, or at least, be a contender to PSA. I think Beckett is probably my second favorite grading company. I love the CGC slabs. I like Beckett. I like the bee. I like the little flower, on the sides of the bee. I don't know. I just like Beckett slabs a lot. And I trust Beckett grading. But anyways, all this to say that people are pissed off that Radar got this grade. They are not happy that it got a 10. A couple channels, Vert, Opossum, they already covered this, I guess, a couple days ago. I'm late to the party. They had some zoomed in photos of the condition of the card. When looking at these photos, I just don't think it tells the whole picture. It's very hard to tell from photos what this card deserved. Maybe it was harshly given a lower grade originally, or it was raw originally. I don't know the full story, but it was very interesting to me, and I was like, okay, this is relevant. This is a relevant topic. I'll tie it in with the other stuff that's going on. But when I look at the card from the images, it doesn't look that bad. It's got whitening on the bottom, but we've seen old cert 10s. We've seen cards with a little bit of whitening that got 10s. Now that's a PSA standard, right? We cannot compare PSA standards or Beckett standards, which are completely different, to CGC. People have been saying since CGC started their grading process with trading cards that CGC hands out higher grades. Whatever. I'm not saying they hand out higher grades. What I'm saying is they've been known for this, right? So if this is assumed and this is known, your card in the market for CGC is typically lower than PSA, pretty much always lower than PSA. Now that's not saying much considering the fact that CGC has its own market of collectors. There are people that only want to collect CGC, and that can't be discounted, okay? There are people that really like CGC, and so I just want to put that out there before saying, oh, CGC is going to get a worse market value than PSA. Yeah, PSA has been around for forever. They have a standard, consistent grading, consistent style. This is one thing that people tout about PSA. This is why people love PSA. Their turnaround isn't great, but their charges right now, $15 bulk card. It's pretty good. Anyways, all that to say that if Radar had sent this card into PSA, it would not have come back at 10. We all know that. But CGC is not PSA. So why we're having all the fuss around a card that's still not PSA, and it's not a Beckett, it's not a, it's not a CGC pristine level, it's pristine grade. It's not their gold label. It's not a Beckett, black label. It's not a Beckett, you know, 9.5, 9.5. It's not showing you specific subgrades. Now, I will say the subgrades are kind of, you know, factored in. They're invisible, you know, with the CGC label. CGC was doing subgrades. They're not doing subgrades anymore. People are kind of upset about that. I liked the subgrades with CGC, but those subgrades are individual. Indivisible. Invisible. Wow, guys. I'm on one today. Indivisible. Anyways, those subgrades are invisible, right? So if it got a Gem Mint 10 by CGC standards, which is kind of like, I would say, PSA 9, is it the worst thing in the world that a 7 got bumped to like a PSA 9 in my standard? This is how I'm thinking of it. No, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. Yeah, he came up big on it, but I think a lot of that hate comes from jealousy. I think a lot of it comes from envy. If I'm going to be perfectly clear here, I think there's a lot of that going around in the hobby in general. When someone gets a really nice high-end card, you know, versus opening modern products and showing their modern cards, nobody's going to hate on you that you have a PSA 10 or CGC 10 or Beckett Black Label modern Pokemon card, right? Because anybody can get their hands on that. There is going to be some hate thrown out there when you have a very rare 1 of 1, 1 of 10, 1 of 20, 1 of 100 extremely valuable cards, and you got a grade back, you got it reholdered, and now boom, you're banking on this one card. You're killing it. You know, this is part of the hustle. This is part of the gamble in Pokemon cards. You know, and I think Radar took that gamble, and you know, he hit big on it. You know, could you go and buy an Illustrator and send it into CGC and maybe get a high grade as well? Yes, but you didn't. He did. So this is, you know, a little bit frustrating to me. Diana, can you text Paul? He's calling me. Can you text Paul that I'm in the middle of a video? Because I hate it when they call me and I'm in the middle of a video. Already I've got work calling. My dad's probably calling about some stuff with our bar. But anyways, I think there's a lot of hate to be dished around, and I think, you know, it's kind of unfair. I think people should be really ecstatic for Radar that he got that grade back. Like, yo, you beat the system. You killed it. Like, I'm not mad at the guy because he made a great play. You know, I'm mad that I didn't think of a play like that to begin with. I'm mad that I wasn't going after this card. You know, and granted, that card to begin with could not have been cheap for him to source, right? So even his initial amount he put into that card could not have been cheap. You know, he risked it for the biscuit. So, you know, my hat is off to him, honestly. And I like his channel. I like what he does. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this card. Does he sell it? Does he take the money and run? Is this card going to stay in his collection and it'll be a flex piece? And the other thing is, like, people who know about this hobby, that are ingrained in the hobby and in the community, and very, you know, people who stay in the community and stay on top of things, no one is going to buy that card for a PSA 10 price. No one is going to buy that card for a premium knowing that it was initially a lower grade or a raw card that doesn't deserve that grade. You're buying the card, you're not buying the grade, which is another topic we need to bring up here. For all the hot boys and the big money whales that are coming into Pokemon and spending ridiculous amounts of money on cards, if they want to buy the card, somebody else is texting me about bar stuff. If they want to buy the card, and they're buying it for the label and not the card, then go right ahead. Get ripped off. Spend all your money on this card that is overgraded and overpriced. Go for it. No one's going to stop you. But I myself would not look at that card and pay the price that he may want for it. Is he selling it? We don't know. Is it going to stay in the collection? We don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this moving forward. I'm definitely going to check out his channel and see what he is saying about this card. He probably is even a little bit shocked what it came back as. But at the end of the day, like, I'm happy for the guy. He made stuff work. He made the system work for him. You know, I'm over here paying top dollar for a vintage PSA 10 card. My last video, I picked up my Grail over here, the Skyridge Charizard, and you know, it is what it is. I wanted to pay a premium. I got my premium card. It's in really good condition. But at the end of the day, grading is very subjective. You need to be very careful of that. There's a lot of PSA 10s, including the one that I own, that could really truly be a PSA PSA 9. I mean, it's very subjective. So you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And if you're looking at purchasing the Pikachu Illustrator, especially from Radar, look at the card. If the card does, if the condition isn't adding up, maybe no one's going to pay that, right? Everything is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. But at the end of the day, if someone that doesn't know a lot about Pokemon but wants to invest in it as a speculative investment, and they want to buy Radar's, CGC 10 Pikachu Illustrator, then so be it. I think that's awesome. That person that doesn't know a lot and doesn't really do their due diligence is going to get burned on buying a card that didn't really deserve that grade. And the other side of it is that he's going to win big for taking the chances on that card. Every now and again, one of these big trade-ups, one of these big reholders changes up and shakes the game in the hobby. People are like, how did this happen? How is he able to make this happen? PSA is over here dinging me on every single thing that I send in, and I get 9s on everything when I think they should be 10s. And then here this guy gets a 10 on a card that should be a lesser grade. That's just how it goes. So, I think people are getting a little bit worked up, in terms of him getting this card in the condition that it is with the grade that it is. But I think it's awesome, and I applaud you. I applaud you, Radar. You've beat the game. You seriously beat the game. You've maxed it out, like that kid who just beat the Tetris for the first time, the world record, and got the screen to freeze. Okay. Anyways, moving forward, this is relevant. It is CGC. CGC's been having a lot of issues, people talking about reholdering, people resealing slabs. This is super sketchy and grimy and scammy, and I don't want to talk about CGC in this light because it is still negative energy that we put back into the hobby, and we really don't want negativity in this hobby. We want, things to be running pretty smooth, but every now and again, the grading companies have something come up that is just bad press. And with people being pissed off about Radar's Illustrator that came back, and on top of that, people being able to reseal these CGC slabs, it's bad news for CGC. They are just having it right now. I will say, there's a smaller channel that I follow, and I actually met this individual. He's very nice, came up to me when I was at Collecticon. DeGreen Shiz. I don't know if you've seen this channel, DeGreen Shiz. Kind of hard to say that, but wow, people are nonstop calling me right now. Stop calling me. I don't know if you've seen this channel, but he did his own due diligence and he showed what it would be like to try and crack open and kind of reseal CGC slabs. And it does not look easy, guys, whether you're using a vise or a heat gun. I thought it was very informative because I think when people hear this news, they're very reactionary. This is a very reactionary community where people are like, oh my God, throwing up the towel. CGC, they're reslabbing, it's a scam. Everything is a scam. It's all a lie. PSA is pop controlling. And they're not giving 10s out to anybody anymore for vintage. Beckett is just becoming kind of irrelevant. SGC is down in the water. It's all doom and gloom as far as grading goes. But the reality, and this goes into our final topic, well, before I do that, I want to say that I think it'd be very hard to reseal cards. And honestly, you should be able to notice that something is off on a slab you get. Now, where this gets really tricky, like in person, I don't think this would be as much of a problem. Where this gets tricky is when you're buying cards off like eBay, and there's the authenticity guarantee, and the card is real, and the slab is real, but it's been resealed. Once that card, and again, this could seriously screw up CGC. Maybe this got more blown up. I don't know where the origins of all of this FUD came from for CGC, but maybe it came from people who are super PSA snobs. I mean, I want to know where all this information is coming from, but regardless, it's bad news when stuff spreads out quickly like this for CGC. People are going to be less likely to buy high-end cards from CGC. I don't think you have to worry about modern cards as much. I mean, and even modern you might have to worry about. But to even do this, right, they still need a legitimate CGC slab, right? And they need the legitimate grade that came with a legitimate slab, right? So it's weird. It sounds like they're cracking slabs and cracking other legit stuff and swapping stuff. it sounds like way too much effort to put in to make some money. Now, if we're talking super high end here, I get where the scammers are thinking. They're thinking I'm gonna make some big bucks by putting a really high end card with a false grade, reslab that guy back together. But for modern, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense why anybody would even want to do this. Or for old vintage, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I feel like it's just like FUD pumping for CGC. And I feel bad for CGC in some respects. They've just been getting bad press after bad press after bad press. In fact, Beckett is looking great in terms of just not having really any bad news coming back on Beckett. Beckett's looking pretty steady right now. I'm surprised Beckett isn't doing a lot better than CGC right now. But all those other grading companies are pretty much doing the same numbers. Whereas PSA, we're going to talk about this in a second. But yeah, I feel bad for the CGC community. I don't think that you guys deserve this. You know, a lot of people that have been collecting CGC when they first started grading, I think the blue labels are pretty cool. I also like the black labels. I have a couple of them on my top shelf. I like the new design they're doing. And it's unfortunate because people who really built most of their collection on CGC are the people that get affected and hurt by this type of news the most because they have to worry and counter check everything. I will say though, watching DeGreen Shiz's video, and shout out to him for making that video and being informative and telling, you know, his side, his perspective, it would be very difficult to reholder and reslab CGC slabs, I think. Is this something that I should maybe experiment on my own? Maybe I'll go buy a heat gun and see if I can maybe open up and reholder a CGC slab and see just how bad this really is. One thing that I would also watch out for, since all of this stuff is going on right now, is maybe be careful what CGC slabs you're buying on eBay right now, just until things cool down a little bit. Maybe, and again, this could hurt CGC's business. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for the collectors. But there's a lot of people that have great experiences with CGC, and I think they will continue to. CGC is going to have to work through this like every grading company has had to work through their hurdles. They're going to have to figure out a way to create some kind of non-reholder technology, some kind of plastic where as soon as you mess with it in any way, it releases a color or a dye, or they use a certain glue that turns like everything frosts over once you open it up. They'll figure it out, right? They've got to. They don't have a choice. It's a PR nightmare. But at the end of the day, I think all these companies are going to continue moving forward. I don't think anybody really wants like CGC to just just bail. Like, I don't think anybody really wants that. I think we all want to have a variety of grading companies, and we want to see them do fairly well. It's also an indicator of how the hobby is doing. So we want grading companies to do well. It gives us a good indicator of where our hobby is. Lastly, and this does tie into it, regardless of what these other companies are doing, CGC, and all their bad press, PSA is actually really on the up and up right now. PSA numbers are continuing to rise, and we're seeing some really interesting information with that as well, which this wasn't the case a couple weeks ago. It seemed like we were seeing mainly Japanese sets being graded the most with PSA. Since they opened the PSA Center in Japan, that's changed the game. We have way more Japanese coming in than we've had before, but still, English now has come back to take the throne. Maybe that's a little dramatic, right? English has not taken the throne just yet, but English now is pretty much making up half of the most graded sets and cards on the PSA, top graded, registry, fact sheet. PSA is doing really well at grading cards, getting the turnover. Their numbers are going up. It seems like they are just killing it, and that's a great indicator for the hobby. I would like to see these other companies catch up with them, but right now PSA is they're staying ahead of the game. And what we're seeing with the numbers with PSA is we're seeing English getting graded just as much as Japanese right now, almost. And mainly with that, we're seeing my favorite, we're seeing 151. We're seeing English 151 graded a lot. I love seeing that. I love 151. I will continue to love 151. We're going to talk about 151 and the opportunities probably in another video. I've been touting 151 a lot. I will continue to tout it. I don't think Paldean Fates has anything on 151. I'm interested to see, honestly, what the next set behind that will be, because so far, I'm not impressed. 151 has been the most impressive thing to me, and I think it would be wise to invest in buying the product, opening the product even. I think that it's so much fun to open 151, and then grading 151 I think can be well worth it still. There is the race to the bottom. Prices are going downhill. This is a great example. There was a short period where this Mew promo was 150 in a 10. I think it's like $50 now in a 10. It's really gotten cheaper, but people are still grading a lot of English 151, and this is awesome. We want to see more of that. I really think if English could really up their game on the quality control for Pokemon cards, they would be a serious rival, especially in grading. People would be grading English like crazy, because I think people want to grade English, but people are getting so frustrated with the quality control, the lack of quality control on English 151, just English products in general, that they're moving towards Japanese, and I don't blame them. But it is nice to see that PSA is grading a lot of English cards now, and it's getting neck and neck with Japanese. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you think about this radar situation. Let me know what you think about the CGC reslabbing situation. Is this really a serious issue? Is this going to pose a serious issue moving forward for all of CGC cards on the market? Would you be wary or skeptical of buying CGC cards knowing that they could possibly be reslabbed? This is something that I don't worry about too much, because I collect PSA mainly, but it is something that I would definitely think about if I were looking at a CGC card. Bad news for CGC. And then let me know what you think about PSA and having all the top sets being graded. I mean, English is coming back in. Could we see a little bit of a resurgence for English Pokemon cards, coming up? A lot of my friends are reaching out to me these days and telling me, Orion, I'm so glad you got back into Pokemon cards. Like, it's so crazy. Like, in the last couple of years, your channel's grown this much, and like, you've influenced me and some of my friends, and now we're all collecting cards, and they're all collecting English products. So, I don't know if the franchise can maintain popularity, especially in the US. We may see more and more English cards getting graded as people come into the hobby and just, they don't want to opt for Japanese because that's not their language, right? And they don't want to opt for Japanese maybe because they don't know the pros of buying Japanese. They don't know that the centering is probably going to be better. The card quality is probably going to be better. There are some nuances and some texture characteristics that make the cards appear a lot nicer, and physically really are nicer cards. I mean, Japanese cards, especially modern Japanese cards, and even vintage Japanese cards, a lot of, like, the shinings. My buddy showed me some of the shinings from Neo Destiny the other day. It was a Noctowl in Japanese, and the Noctowl looked way better than the English Noctowl. So, there are some serious pros to buying Japanese cards, as well as the price can be a lot better for buying Japanese cards because there's a lot more of them in Japan, whereas the English cards, and this, you cannot discount this fact, English cards were seriously mistreated. So many people got cards when they were kids, on the Western Hemisphere, and people just trashed their cards. Even as a kid, I had a binder, but I know I trashed most of my cards. You just didn't know to take care of this stuff. So I think there's a lot of attrition and a lot of cards that got lost that are in bad condition in the US, especially when it comes to vintage. So that makes them, it makes their population lower. It makes them harder to grade, which is why English cards are kind of rarer to grade and get higher grades on. Does that necessarily mean they're the best value? Probably not. Japanese is probably the best value. But then again, I'm still not collecting Japanese. As much as I like some Japanese products, I bought this. This is one of the few Japanese products I picked up recently that I really, really like. Highly recommend it. They're fairly cheap right now, even though they're way over what they should be. But the Yokohama Pikachu deck that comes with this awesome promo. This deck card. This deck Pikachu is actually one of the top graded cards right now, actually. I mean, Pikachu in general is one of the top graded cards. I really like Pikachu. I don't know how you could not like Pikachu. And it's just, it's a hype card, let's be honest. The Van Gogh Pikachu just spiked a whole new love for Pikachu right there again. Pikachu is constantly the mascot of Pokemon, even if he's taken out of the anime for some time. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts. Peace out. Have a fantastic night.